Congratulations, CIS102. You have already endured and persevered and made it through like 40 years of the development of HTML and web pages throughout history. When we started all the way back with Hello World, you are looking at, the epitome of 1960s HTML and CSS technology. No CSS actually at that point, just HTML. And by the time it is that you have progressed down through formatting with color and formatting with CSS, now we've got web pages through, like, let's say the 1990s, when you started with creating classes and IDs, and when you started with the connecting Google Fonts and the Google Font Library. Now you're looking at early 2000s nomenclature for how it is that web pages are put together. So you've already kind of zoomed here through history, and that is an outstanding start. And with the classes and IDs, we started the idea that, look, as a developer, I want a page to look the way I want a page to look. And you as a developer should have that opportunity to have a web page look the way you want a web page to look. Now, the next step here is creating blocks of content with classes and IDs. And it's easy, honestly, at its core. It goes very quickly, but I think it needs a little bit of explanation before we get there. So first and foremost, before we even look at code, let's take a look instead at what a block of content is giving a page in the way of design. So I'm going to come here to our textbook, which doubtless by now you have read at least a little bit of. And here in our textbook, in print media, we are using blocks of content to help you, the reader, go from one, I'll call them section, to another. So up here in the upper left-hand corner, we've got this big chapter 3 marker, and that is a block of content, right? That lets you know this is chapter 3. I'm hoping that worked with my microphone. Poor microphone. Over here to the immediate right of that, we have this using the internet to make the most of the web's resources. That's a big block of content. Down here, each one of these. There we go. Each one of, it's trying to make a note, part 1 and part 2 are blocks of content. So it's a square with a background color, blue, a foreground color, black. It's got up in the upper left-hand corners of each of those two sections, it has part 1 and part 2. Those are blocks of content. And to do that, we would rely on classes and IDs, and that's what will come next. But how does this look on the web? So here I've got The Verge. This is, and again, it was 1,000 videos ago by now, but this is the same site I referenced way back in the How Do We Use the Web Now video. And this is what a modern web page, for the most part, looks like. You can look at something like a Reddit and say Reddit doesn't have any design. That's probably true. You could look at something like a Craigslist and say that Craigslist doesn't have any design. That is probably true. But this is why we have the web, so that something can look the way we see it here with The Verge. Now, each one of these big blocks here is a block of content. So this right here, Meta goes into lockdown, is one block of content. Qualcomm's next-gen CPUs, block of content. What do you notice about Meta goes into lockdown and Spotify, Discord, and others over here? They're essentially just mirror images of the same block of content. Each of these, I'll call them a rectangular block of content. Over here, what do you notice about Meta Sci-Fi Haptic and Qualcomm's Next Gen CPU? Those are square blocks of content. And we rely on HTML and CSS and developers creating, so that's you, that's me, developers creating content blocks in CSS. So that's what we're going to see in two pieces of code that follow this. The first piece of code, we'll just walk through it, everybody together. The second piece of code, we'll start typing along and adding things as we progress. So buckle up, but it gets really interesting from here.